Say hello nicely.
Hello, nicely.
Silly dad, isn't he, Ava?
I want to be a princess when I grow up.
In quiet villages, tragedy rarely announces itself. It hides behind routine. School bags by the door, dinner plans, messages left unread for just a little too long. From the outside, everything looks calm, almost picture perfect. A family home, 2 small children, a life that appears settled, safe, ordinary. But violence doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it grows silently, behind closed doors, wrapped in politeness, stress, and unspoken fear. Sometimes it lives beside love, disguised as control. And sometimes, the most devastating acts are carried out by the person no one ever thought to question. In the early days of a nationwide lockdown, when families were told home was the safest place to be, one household became the site of an irreversible loss. A mother devoted to her daughters. 2 young girls just beginning to understand the world. A future that should have stretched decades ahead, ended in a single, calculated night. This is not a story about strangers or chance encounters. It's about what happens when warning signs are missed, when silence feels safer than speaking, and when systems meant to protect fail at the most critical moment. What follows is the story of Kelly Fitzgibbons, and the devastating consequences of a truth that surfaced far too late. From the outside, the house on Duffield Lane blended perfectly into the quiet rhythm of Woodmancoat. A detached home set back from the road, a garden where children's toys were scattered, a place that looked exactly like thousands of others across West Sussex. Nothing about it suggested danger. Nothing hinted that behind its walls, fear had been slowly taking root. For Kelly Fitzgibbons, this was supposed to be the life she had always wanted. At 40 years old, Kelly was a devoted mother to 2 young daughters, Ava and Lexi. Ava, 4, was full of energy and imagination, telling anyone who would listen that she planned to be a princess one day. Lexi, just 2, was mischievous and affectionate, with the same distinctive curly hair as her mother. Kelly worked part-time as a legal secretary, balancing work with motherhood, and she spoke to her identical twin sister Emma every single day without fail. To those who knew her, Kelly was warmth itself, kind, funny, always smiling. Her family described her as the heart of everything. Online, her life looked idyllic. Family walks, smiling photographs, captions filled with love for her girls. Her Facebook bio said it all in one line. Totally in love with my baby girls. What no one could see was how much effort it took to keep that image intact. Kelly had been born on December 30th, 1979, at St. Richard's Hospital in Chichester, just 7 minutes after Emma. The twins grew up inseparable in West Ashling, sharing schools, hobbies, and an easy closeness that lasted into adulthood. Home videos from the 1990s showed them dancing and laughing together, finishing each other's sentences. Even as adults, that bond never faded. Emma would later say Kelly was the one who made her laugh more than anyone else in the world. Kelly had always wanted children. When Ava and Lexi arrived, they became the center of her universe. Motherhood wasn't just part of her identity, it was her purpose. Everything she did revolved around keeping her girls safe, happy, and loved. Robert James Neam was 42 when he died. To most people, he appeared quiet, thoughtful, dependable. A self-employed builder running R.J. Neam Building Services, he was described by family members as the sort of man who kept to himself, but would always help if asked. Ava, in particular, adored him. She was said to be a real daddy's girl. Kelly and Robert had been together for more than a decade. They lived in the Woodmancoat house alongside Robert's 77-year-old mother, Maureen, who owned the property. Kelly, Robert, and the children occupied their own section of the home rent-free, while Robert worked on extending the building. The house, valued at well over £500,000, had once been run as a care home by the family. On paper, things looked stable, comfortable, even prosperous. Just weeks before the tragedy, the couple had bought a second buy-to-let investment property. Their first rental covered both mortgages. To friends and relatives, it looked like a family planning sensibly for the future. But stability can be an illusion. Behind the scenes, cracks had been widening for months. Robert's building company had been dissolved in October 2019, leaving him effectively out of work. Financial pressure mounted quietly. The couple had borrowed around £20,000 from Maureen. Kelly carried credit card debt. Robert had a significant bank loan hanging over him. None of this was visible in photographs or casual conversations. More concerning was what emerged later through messages Kelly had sent privately. Texts recovered during the investigation revealed a woman living in a state of constant emotional vigilance. Kelly asked Robert to be civil in front of the children. She begged him not to shout, not to slam doors. In one message, she admitted she dreaded coming home. In another, she explained she was getting out of his way because she could see how angry he was. These were not arguments between equals. They were the words of someone trying to manage another person's mood to keep the peace, especially for her children. Robert would sometimes disappear for days, leaving Kelly alone to care for Ava and Lexi. When he was present, his temper filled the house. Kelly told no one, not her friends, not her family, not even Emma, the person she trusted most. On February 5, 2020, Kelly sent a message that would later feel unbearably ominous. "I think we should have a break and see how we both feel." Robert's reply was brief. "If that's how you really feel." They agreed to a trial separation. Still, Kelly kept the truth to herself. Emma would later say she had no idea anything was wrong. She believed Kelly's life was good. That silence, born from love, fear, or hope, would prove devastating. Robert, meanwhile, was battling problems of his own. He had a documented history of depression, treated as a teenager and again in adulthood. He had reported work-related stress to his GP years earlier and had expressed suicidal thoughts in the past. Unknown to Kelly, he also had a long-standing cocaine habit. He had blamed damage to his nose on building dust, but medical specialists later confirmed it was caused by drug use. Hair analysis after his death would show cocaine consumption in the months leading up to the killings. In the days before everything ended, Robert made multiple unsuccessful attempts to buy cocaine. And there was something else, something that would turn a volatile situation into a fatal one. Years earlier, Robert had applied for a shotgun license. During that process, he failed to disclose key information, including a past police caution and aspects of his mental health history. Despite these omissions, the license was granted. Warnings that should have followed never materialized. Later, he obtained a firearms certificate as well. By 2019, he owned no guns. For 9 months, he was a licensed gun holder with nothing to license. That changed on March 20, 2020. On the very day the UK entered its first COVID lockdown, Robert walked into a registered firearms dealer and bought a shotgun. He said it was for pest control. 9 days later, that weapon would be used inside the home Kelly believed was her sanctuary. As Britain retreated indoors, told repeatedly that home was the safest place to be, Kelly Fitzgibbons remained unaware that the greatest danger to her and her children was already inside. And the final weekend of their lives was about to begin. The final weekend of March 2020 unfolded like countless others across Britain. Quiet, uncertain, restrained by a nation under lockdown. Families stayed close to home, routines slowed, and the outside world fell silent. For Kelly Fitzgibbons and her daughters, it was meant to be another ordinary weekend, inside the safety of familiar walls. On Friday, March 27th, Kelly posted photographs from a countryside walk. The caption was simple, affectionate, and reassuring. A family moment, a heart emoji. To anyone scrolling past, it looked like proof that whatever stress lockdown had brought, this family was coping together. What made the post unusual was Robert's presence. He rarely joined these outings, often preferring to stay behind or focus on work. That detail would stand out later, like a misplaced piece in an otherwise comforting image. The following evening, the family ordered a Chinese takeaway. The delivery driver would later realize, with horror, that he had been the last person to see them alive. Inside the house, nothing appeared amiss. There were no raised voices reported, no disturbances that neighbors noticed. Normalcy did its best to mask what was coming. At around 6:20 p.m., Robert joined a FaceTime call with his half-sister. She would later describe him as calm, relaxed, completely unremarkable. The children were nearby. There were no signs of distress, no cryptic statements, no farewell words. Just conversation, as ordinary as any other family call. Earlier that day, Robert had been in the garden, assembling a playhouse for Ava and Lexi. He worked carefully, methodically, building something meant for laughter and imagination. Something his daughters would never have the chance to use. Investigators would later note the chilling contrast. How a man could construct a gift for his children while, somewhere in his mind, making a decision that would erase their future entirely. As evening settled in, Robert made small charitable donations online to organizations like the Red Cross and Shelter. These gestures were entirely out of character. They appeared sudden, impulsive, almost ceremonial. Later that night, he sent a friend a darkly ironic video clip about suicide, framed as humor. It was sent at 11:45 p.m. No explanation accompanied it. No follow-up message ever would. In another part of the house, Maureen, Robert's elderly mother, was awake. She later told investigators that during the night, she heard a loud thud, followed by banging noises. In a home with young children, this didn't seem alarming. She assumed the girls were jumping, playing, or restless in bed. It wasn't unusual. She went back to sleep, unaware that those sounds marked the beginning of an irreversible act. At some point during the night or early morning, Robert took the shotgun he had legally purchased 9 days earlier. The forensic evidence would later show there was no struggle for the weapon. No signs that Kelly anticipated what was about to happen. The ballistics expert would conclude that each shot fired hit its intended target. 6 shots in total. 6 lives ended: Kelly, Ava, Lexi, and the family dog, Billy, before Robert turned the gun on himself. The violence was swift and deliberate. Kelly was killed first. Ava and Lexi were shot while wearing their pajamas. They were placed side by side beneath a duvet on their parents' bed, as though someone had tried to arrange them gently after the fact. The dog was also killed, lying near the family. Nothing suggested a chaotic confrontation. This was not an explosion of rage. It was methodical. And then, silence. For almost 24 hours, no one knew. Sunday came and went. Messages went unanswered. Calls rang out into nothing. Emma, Kelly's twin, began to feel uneasy. Kelly never went a day without speaking to her. Not once. The absence gnawed at her. Maureen, too, was becoming concerned. Something felt wrong in a way she couldn't explain. At approximately 6:45 p.m. on Sunday, March 29th, Maureen contacted Kelly's uncle, Ronald Peacock. Together, they decided to check on the family. No one answered the door. Peacock, growing increasingly anxious, noticed an open window. He climbed inside, calling out as he moved through the house. When he reached the bedroom, the scene before him shattered any remaining hope. Ava and Lexi lay together beneath the covers. Kelly was on the floor near the door. In the hallway, Robert lay with the shotgun pointed toward his head. There were no survivors. Peacock called emergency services immediately. Within minutes, police vehicles and ambulances descended on the normally quiet village. Blue lights cut through the dusk. Officers moved through the house in stunned silence. Even for experienced responders, the scale of the loss was overwhelming. Sussex Police launched a murder investigation under the name Operation Cotton. Detective Chief Inspector Charlotte Rimmer was appointed to lead what would become one of the most comprehensive domestic homicide investigations in recent British history. Post-mortem examinations carried out in early April confirmed what the scene suggested. Kelly and the children had been shot at close range. The lack of defensive injuries supported the conclusion that they were taken completely by surprise. There was no evidence of another person being involved. The killer was also the final victim. The question investigators were left with was not who, but why. And as the inquiry deepened, it became clear that this tragedy was not just about one man's actions, but about a series of failures that allowed those actions to become possible. As investigators began to piece together the timeline, attention shifted away from the final night and toward the years that had quietly led up to it. What emerged was not a single breaking point, but a slow accumulation of risk, missed opportunities to intervene, warning signs that never fully connected until it was too late. At the heart of the inquiry was the shotgun. Robert Neam had legally obtained the weapon just 9 days before the killings. On paper, everything appeared compliant. He held a valid firearms certificate. The dealer followed protocol. The sale was lawful. Yet the deeper investigators looked, the more troubling the background became. When Robert first applied for a shotgun license years earlier, he had failed to disclose a police caution from his mid-20s. He also omitted significant details about his mental health history, including periods of depression and suicidal ideation. When questioned during a mandatory home visit, he offered explanations that were accepted without challenge. Despite clear inconsistencies, the application was approved. A warning letter, meant to be sent when applicants provide incomplete or misleading information, was recommended. It was never issued. The file moved between police forces. Oversight diluted responsibility. The moment passed. In 2017, Robert applied for a firearms certificate. His GP surgery was contacted to comment on his suitability. They declined, citing lack of capacity. The license was granted anyway. Under existing rules, firearms licenses were reviewed every 5 years. That meant years could pass without any meaningful reassessment. By late 2019, Robert was unemployed. His business had folded. Financial strain was building. His cocaine use had resumed. His relationship was deteriorating. Kelly had asked for a break. Yet none of this triggered any review of his access to firearms, because there was no system in place that required it. The inquest would later describe this as a catalogue of failures. The inquest into the deaths of Kelly, Ava and Lexi was held in July 2022 at Horsham Coroner's Court. For 5 days, evidence was examined with clinical precision. Police officers, firearms licensing officials, medical professionals, and family members all gave testimony. Each piece added clarity, but not comfort. Assistant Coroner Bridget Dolan QC made one thing clear. Responsibility for the killings lay solely with Robert Neam. No system failure changed that. But systems could, and should, have reduced the risk. She acknowledged the unbearable question the family carried. Why? Why had this happened? Why had there been no warning? Why had no one stepped in? The coroner offered the only honest answer available. There was no single explanation. No note, no final message that revealed motive. The inquest could examine process and policy, but it could not reach into the private thoughts that led Robert to make his final decision. That uncertainty became a weight Kelly's family would carry forever. For Emma Amler, Kelly's twin, grief quickly turned into resolve. Emma had lost not just her sister, but her nieces, children she loved as her own. Ava and Lexi were more than names in a report. They were bedtime stories, giggles, shared birthdays, and futures that would never arrive. Emma refused to let their deaths fade into statistics. She established the Kelly Fitzgibbons Foundation, determined to address the gaps that had allowed this tragedy to occur. She met with MPs. She spoke publicly. She became a trustee for charities supporting victims of violence against women. Again and again, she returned to the same point. Dishonesty in firearms applications must be a red line. Her demands were practical, not abstract. Licenses should be refused if applicants lie. Mental health histories should matter. Partners and household members should be consulted. Reviews should happen annually, not every 5 years. GPs should be required to report changes that could affect safety. Emma spoke plainly. If Robert had not been granted a firearms license, she believed her family would still be alive. Public support followed. When Emma launched a small fundraiser for a memorial bench, seeking £800, the donations exceeded £7,000. The bench was installed at Bosham Football Club, where the twins had spent their childhood. A quiet place. A place for reflection. Years passed. Then, in August 2025, change finally came. The Home Office announced sweeping reforms to firearms licensing in England and Wales. The events in Woodmancoat were cited explicitly, alongside other major cases, as evidence of the need for reform. The new guidance required 2 referees for shotgun applications, made dishonesty automatic grounds for refusal, and mandated interviews with partners and household members. For Emma, it was the first time she felt truly heard. She said the changes would not bring her family back, but they might protect someone else's. Kelly Fitzgibbons lived her life devoted to her daughters. Ava dreamed of being a princess. Lexi loved cuddles and story time. Their lives were full of possibility. What ended them was not sudden madness, but access to a weapon that should never have been there, in a home that should have been safe. And the final lesson of this case was becoming painfully clear. Silence protects nothing. Not families, not futures, not children. Only accountability does. The quiet after a tragedy is often louder than the event itself. In Woodmancoat, the house on Duffield Lane stands as it always did. Bricks intact, garden still. A place that once held laughter and routine. To passers-by, it is just another home. But for those who knew Kelly, Ava and Lexi, it is a permanent reminder of how quickly safety can vanish when warning signs are missed and silence fills the gaps. Kelly Fitzgibbons was not reckless. She was not careless. She was a loving mother, doing what countless women do every day. Holding things together, protecting her children, minimizing conflict, and hoping that patience and love would be enough. She didn't broadcast her fear. She didn't ask for help. She absorbed it quietly, believing she could manage it on her own. That belief cost her everything. This case forces an uncomfortable truth into the open. Violence in the home does not always look like violence. Sometimes it looks like tension, like walking on eggshells, like asking someone not to shout in front of the children, like dreading the sound of a door opening. These moments rarely make headlines, but they matter. So do systems. The inquest made it clear that Robert Neam alone chose to pull the trigger. But it also exposed how easily safeguards can fail when dishonesty is overlooked, when health concerns are minimized, and when the voices of partners and families are never asked for. A single decision, to approve a license, to skip a warning, to delay a review, can echo far beyond paperwork. Emma Amler turned her grief into action, because she refused to accept that her sister's death was inevitable. Through years of campaigning, she transformed personal loss into public change. The reforms that followed will not bring Kelly back. They will not give Ava and Lexi the lives they deserved, but they may prevent another family from sitting in the same unbearable silence. And that matters. Kelly was born 7 minutes after her twin sister. She lived her life centered around love, devotion, and motherhood. Ava wanted to be a princess. Lexi wanted cuddles and stories. They were ordinary, extraordinary children. Exactly the kind whose lives should never become case studies. Their story is not about sensational violence. It is about missed chances, hidden suffering, and the consequences of looking away when things feel uncomfortable to confront. If there is one truth this case leaves behind, it is this. Home is only safe when we take the warning signs seriously, when we listen, question, and act before silence turns fatal. If this story made you pause, reflect, or reconsider what normal can sometimes hide, then it has done its job. Like the video to help this story reach more people. Share it with someone who believes awareness matters. And subscribe if you want more in-depth stories that focus not just on what happened, but why it happened. Because remembering Kelly, Ava, and Lexi isn't just about honoring their lives. It's about protecting the lives that still can be.